Welcome to the SVG-TV news for Thursday, January 7th. I am Khalil Cato with the details. Deputy Commissioner of Police Frankie Joseph has tested positive for COVID-19, forcing several members of the High Command of the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force into quarantine. 5 of the high-ranking officers, including Police Commissioner Colin John, were asked to quarantine from this morning. The police commissioner told SVG-TV News via a telephone interview that they are working from home and there has been no disruption of work.
I'm working from home as far as possible. Where there are other duties that have to be hands-on, there are competent senior officers who can execute those duties.
Their quarantine period will be for at least 5 days, as they are asked to monitor themselves and will be retested before an all-clear is given. Commissioner John said they are working closely with the Ministry of Health as contact tracing has begun.
It's flexible right now because as the contact tracing list is prepared, there are different persons already. Okay. So I can't give the specific number now. Things are generally in place. We are in consultation with the Ministry of Health, and we are putting things in place to make sure that persons are safe, generally in St. Vincent and Grenadines.
Earlier this week, several other officers were also ordered into quarantine after at least 6 of their colleagues were tested positive for COVID-19. In a news release today, the Public Relations and Complaints Department of the Police Force said that COVID-19 protocols are being observed throughout the organization to mitigate further spread of the virus among the ranks and the public in general, and that effective on Monday, a number of additional measures were implemented. These include members of the public visiting or doing business at all police stations, units, and departments wearing face masks. The face mask must cover the nose and mouth and should remain in place for the duration of the visit. Social distancing by at least 3 to 6 feet apart at all times, and visitors must utilize the sanitization stations provided on entry to the compound and buildings. To mitigate what it says will be a crippling effect on the delivery of critical public services, the Public Service Union today called on the government to institute a shift system for public servants. In a statement, the PSU noted that the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment has announced that 28 adult nationals with no recent travel history have tested positive for COVID-19. And in a telephone interview with SVG-TV News, the PSU's President Elroy Boucher said a shift system was introduced early on in the pandemic when there were just about 10 cases in the country. Boucher said with over 100 cases recorded and at least 49 active, a shift system for public servants is the best way to go right now.
So we are concerned with the impact on workers and how much they can be exposed, and also with productivity within the public service. And so we have made a call for the public service to be allowed to go on a shift system. This was implemented very early, I think in March, April, when COVID had just started affecting us in St. Vincent.
The PSU president said that almost all of the workplaces, including government services, do not allow for physical distancing, which is a recommendation by the health authorities to avoid the spread of the virus.
The way public servants are packed within the public service, they are within close proximity. There is hardly any area or any department or unit within the public service where you can easily space out 3 or more feet, right? There's hardly any such areas. So clearly you will, and then the interaction.
Boucher said that they are not asking for a shutdown, but for the authorities to be considerate at this time.
True purpose of this is to prevent an entire department or unit being shut down in the event that someone gets infected from a department or a unit, and it is not known when or how they got infected. And so the entire department, therefore, given what has been happening, will have to be quarantined or take precautions. So you don't want to shut down entire units within the public service. So it is best to put them on shift. So if one shift is impacted, you still have the other shift to as a backup. And so you allow the public service to continue functioning in a productive manner while safeguarding, of course, the health of a public servant at the same time.
The PSU president said they have written to the Public Service Commission to make known their concerns and recommendations. The opposition New Democratic Party has also expressed concern with the increase in the number of COVID-19 cases in the country, especially the local spread. In a statement today, the NDP said the recent developments have heightened public concern about the situation and has diminished public confidence in the way the government is seeking to manage the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the NDP, the present spike of infections has already affected the education system by delaying the reopening of schools, negatively affecting the economy, resulting in business closures and higher unemployment. The NDP is of the view that the government is not taking a proactive approach in the management of COVID-19 and appears to have no effective plan to comprehensively address the crisis. The party calls on the government to provide the public with a timely and adequate information about the state of the pandemic in SVG and to implement measures that will prevent further local transmission of the virus, and urges that schools remain closed until the situation of local spread is brought under control. The NDP is also calling on the government to outline its plan, if it has any, for the use of the COVID-19 vaccine in SVG. The party said its president and leader of the parliamentary opposition, Dr. Godwin Friday, reiterates his call for everyone to act responsibly by following the health protocols to prevent the further spread of the virus. Procurement of the COVAX vaccine for SVG is in progress, which is expected to arrive by the end of the first quarter of this year. So says Chief Medical Officer Dr. Simone Kieser-Beach at a news conference hosted on Tuesday by the Ministry of Health. The CMO says they are working with several international agencies, including the Pan American Health Organization.
Asking for sufficient vaccine to immunize 70,000 Vincentians, basically 70% of our population, which is 70,000 Vincentians. Under the COVAX facility, sufficient vaccine for 20,000 Vincentians would be given to us free of cost. That is the intention, though I must caution that as yet the COVAX facility has not been able to get all of the funding they need to be able to meet all of the commitments they have made. They are still seeking funding. Their goal is $5 billion.
Dr. Kieser-Beach said the rollout of the vaccines is being communicated through the relevant authorities.
Which is letting persons understand what is happening, how it will happen. Luckily for St. Vincent, as with most of the OECS countries and CARICOM countries, we have an excellent primary health care center system which allows for efficient delivery of vaccinations as we know it. Granted, that's a vaccination system that is targeted mainly towards children and the school health program, but the mechanisms, the structures exist so that we do not anticipate in terms of some of the challenges we are seeing in some other countries that we would have that challenge in terms of rollout. We are in the process of acquiring, procuring the ultra-cold vaccine fridges to store, also transport vehicles to move the vaccine from place to place.
The wearing of masks has not been made mandatory, but is strongly recommended by the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment as one of the protective measures against COVID-19. With this in mind, some van drivers have been doing their part to protect themselves and their passengers. However, they say they cannot force a passenger to wear a mask before getting on board.
Make sure everybody come with a mask and make sure the van is clean and everything.
Well, I wear my mask, I make sure everybody wear the mask, so you understand? I sanitize everything, so I will take care of yourself, you know.
But are the passengers compliant?
Yeah.
We are concerned because it affects us momentarily, but we have our masks, we have sanitizer, so we're prepared and we advise the customers to be prepared as well.
I wear my mask and urge everybody else to wear their mask. But so far, most of the people who catch in the van wearing their masks, which is good.
Meanwhile, our news team spoke with a number of persons in capital Kingstown today who expressed concern for their health and the growing number of COVID-19 cases in the country. They say they are not taking any chances and have been complying with all the protocols.
I'm going to ask somebody for one, I hear about the thing and I put it on. But I don't get the time to do wrong and do wrong and do wrong.
Well, I learn it over the Facebook and TV. Make sure we wear it because it's safer instead of catching the corona. So yeah, because I have kids, so then I have to be careful about it.
It's a good thing. Keep the virus down a little bit, keep everyone safe and stuff like that, yeah. This morning when I come up, I heard they talking about the corona and said that it is more in the country. So as I walk in here, I am more concerned because I have my family, right? So we need to get more protected more than how we are, because we never know. Because you could come in contact with somebody you don't even know. But this morning I was up there by the fish market, and if you're going to the fish market, they have something that tests the temperature. So I test mine and it is okay. So God bless. Yeah. They use it after, and when they come in, I make sure that I put on my gloves and I have my mask, and I make sure it's clean when I go, and I tend to flush the toilet and make sure I have the bleach and everything to keep it clean.
The reopening of schools across St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been delayed further by a week, with online classes set to begin on Monday, January 11th. This was announced by Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves on radio this morning.
The start of the school term. In fact, yesterday in Cabinet, we decided that we would extend the resumption of the school term by a further week, but we will start from Monday.
PM Gonsalves said that new tablets were already distributed to students for online teaching.
Secondary school to grade 6 in the primary schools. We have done that with the tablets now.
Yes, correct.
And the other 1,300, we had procurement challenges. That's why the other 13,000 not here for grade 5 downwards. I think they have about 1,000 or so which they distribute. They're probably going to distribute it to selected grade 5 schools with grade 5, and until they get the other 13,000 now.
The Prime Minister said that protocols for schools are currently being reviewed by the COVID-19 task force. The reopening of schools is now scheduled for January 18th. With the distribution of tablets late last year by the government to students across SVG from grade 6 at the primary level to secondary school students and those in college, along with their teachers, Minister of Education Curtis King said that teachers and students are now more equipped for e-learning. Minister King said that last year, a number of schools faced challenges with students not being able to have access to devices for the online classes.
Thus far, we have completed the distribution of the tablets to students. What we are doing now, we are distributing the tablets to teachers. All the teachers at the primary school level, they are receiving tablets, and all the teachers at the secondary level, except for those teachers who are temporary or relief, trying to ensure in the end that all teachers have devices that will allow them to deliver the instruction.
King highlighted the online platforms that the Ministry of Education has identified for the teachers at the primary and secondary levels to conduct e-learning.
The Microsoft Teams e-learning platform as the preferred platform. And so the primary schools, they are in fact all exposed to this platform. And this is the one being used primarily at the level of the primary schools. At the level of the secondary schools, some schools had in the past been doing and using different platforms. And to ensure that we do not have a disruption in the delivery of the online instruction, the ministry is accommodating the secondary schools using a combination of the various platforms in some cases, while others would, of course, be using the same Microsoft Teams as well as Google Suite. There's another one, Edmodo, which is also being used. But as I'm saying, some secondary schools are using a combination of these.
Minister King said that teachers should now be more comfortable using these online platforms, as the process is a continuation of where they left off last year.
Teachers have been exposed to online delivery of instruction before, and in fact most teachers would have participated in the delivery of instruction via online platform, because last term in the last school year, teachers were in fact using these platforms to deliver instruction.
Meanwhile, President of the SVG Teachers Union, Oswald Robinson, said there should be a clear policy for e-teaching. In an interview with SVG-TV News yesterday, Robinson said there have been discussions at the level of the Education Advisory Board. However, no changes have been made.
But what we need is a clear policy on e-teaching. We don't have that in the education system, right? I know there was a discussion at the level of the Education Advisory Board concerning a clear policy, and that was forwarded to the Ministry of Education. As it stands now, there's still no clear policy on e-teaching. So a teacher may be bombarded at 12 o'clock in the night when you're relaxing with your family, your parents sending a question to you. There should be clear guidelines in terms of hours of operation. It is true now that part of your home would be used as a classroom to teach the students, right? And that area has to be conducive for learning, even though you're doing it at a distance, okay? In terms of background noise, how you dress as a teacher, the readiness of the students, they also must have an area in the home that they could sit, relax, and receive the teaching.
Robinson said though some training had been done with teachers on the use of some of the e-learning platforms, there is a need for more training to be done.
Teachers are at 3 levels when it comes to e-teaching, e-learning. There are some who are relatively new, so the training they had was just a little orientation and induction. And those are the ones who are calling for more training so that they'll develop more competency in delivering the curriculum using the distance mode. There are some who are on the average. They just need a little bit more boosting up. And there are some teachers who are more or less experts. Okay? Especially those younger teachers who have just finished the college and they are accustomed to distant teaching to the university, sending questions to their tutors, doing assignments online and that sort of thing. Okay? So we want all teachers to be equipped, fully equipped, to utilize the technology as to exploit it to their advantage so that the students would benefit. Because we, from a union, we are concerned about quality teaching.
The SVG-TU president said parents and guardians should also be trained so that they can be able to help their children with the programs and their schoolwork.
So ask that the parents receive some kind of training in using the platforms. Because most of the time the parents or the guardians have to help the children with the assignments. They have to monitor them. And if they are not able to monitor, when you think the child is there, he may or she may be doing his or her own thing. So we have to equip our parents.
Robinson said that the main challenge his members have now with the e-learning is poor internet service provided to schools. He also noted that there are still some homes without internet access and electricity.
Interestingly, the internet in some cases was zero. You know, the strength of it, and there was no school going on. And how could you have a provider providing such very poor quality service in this day and age, when we are in the information age, when e-teaching and e-learning now is imperative? You can't have people providing you a couple of children log on and then you don't have no internet. In the secondary schools, there are school labs that the internet is zero. And we can't go forward like this. So I'm calling on the internet providers for school to do your job and do it properly. You can't receive in money whatever benefits, and the school system is being, the education system is being tampered with in a negative way, you know?
Yesterday, the team from the UWI Seismic Research Center on the ground here in SVG has reported to have conducted a successful reconnaissance of the La Soufrière volcano on board a French helicopter. This was through an arrangement between the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the government of France through the Embassy of France to the Eastern Caribbean states, Barbados and the OECS in St. Lucia. An update from the National Emergency Management Organization says the second planned reconnaissance on that day on board the Regional Security System aircraft was cancelled due to the presence of heavy cloud cover when the aircraft arrived. Meanwhile, on a program on VC3 last evening, head of the UWI SRC team, Professor Richard Robertson, said the new dome is growing at different rates and that the dangers from this growth are presently confined to the crater and surrounding areas.
And the dangers come from the fact that you have a lot of gas that's being emitted, and as the dome grows, as it gets unstable, the edges sort of break up. And when the edges break up, they expose fresh magma inside under the surface that is hotter, that has more gas, and therefore that sort of creates a little flow that's quite hot. And in those areas where it's sort of feeling slightly on the edges, it will pose a danger if you were close to it, basically. So that's why the recommendation is that people shouldn't go to the crater, and because they will put themselves at harm's way. So we continue to monitor it. We have put in stations. We have augmented the monitoring network, and over the next week or so, I think by middle of next week, late next week, we probably would be in a much more comfortable position in terms of where we would like the monitoring to be.
Professor Robertson say they continue to keep a close eye on the volcano, which is quite necessary.
It's necessary for for several reasons. One is that we want to monitor the rate at which it's growing. That's important because even though it's a big open crater, there's a certain amount of space that it has to fill up, therefore, before it starts sort of getting outside the crater, because we want to see if it's going to spill over, because as it grows, it could potentially spill over. And if it spills over, some of those same material that breaks off, they can go down the mountainside and they could cause harm even down the valleys that it's spilling into. So we want to monitor the growth. We want to see where it's growing, both the rate and where exactly it's growing, to look at whether it has a chance of compromising or getting outside the crater. And the other thing we want to do is get in a position where we could tell if it gives any indication that it's going from effusive dome growth, which is where the harm is confined to a particular area, to possibly some sort of explosive activity. And just to finally say that, soufrière is known from years to have two kinds of eruptions, explosive and effusive, and we're monitoring for that.
Noting that they will constantly provide the public with updates about what is happening and the possibilities, Professor Robertson said there is a lot of uncertainty on whether the current eruption of the volcano can move from effusive to explosive.
This will stay effusive, or that it will go explosive, or when it would go. What we do is that we try to keep as close an eye as possible on it, so that if and when it goes, we can alert the authorities. But in their stead, what they also need to do, and which they are trying to do, is to make sure the population are informed and aware of what they should do if something happens. So that even if you don't get the message and you're in Chateaubelair, in Fancy, and you see something happen, given the information we are telling you, you should then be able to know, even if NEMO didn't come or seismic didn't come or somebody didn't say that the volcano is erupting, you should know that, well, this sounds like something that I should do A, B, or C. That's the stage we need to get at. We all need to get to the stage where we are aware of what the hazards are, so we could take sensible decisions ourselves to move or not to move or to do whatever it is. And the authorities need to also do that, and it's a constant work in progress.
Meanwhile, the alert level of the volcano remains at orange. NEMO said persons living in the areas close to the volcano should expect a strong sulfur smell for several days to weeks, depending on the changes in wind direction. Members of NEMO met earlier today with residents of Sandy Bay and surrounding communities to update them on the present situation at the La Soufrière volcano and to review the community volcano emergency plan. On Saturday, January 9th from 3 p.m., they will be meeting with residents of Georgetown and surrounding areas for the same purpose. NEMO is reminding the public that no evacuation order or notice has been issued and continues to appeal to the public to desist from visiting the La Soufrière volcano until the scientists advise that it is safe to do so. Residents in the red and orange zones of the volcano continue to make preparations in the event of an evacuation order. Those in Rosebank, which is in the orange zone on the leeward end, have been preparing with their disaster groups. Our news team spoke to the members of the Rosebank Disaster Group who said they are now meeting regularly and have been communicating with other residents on their level of preparedness.
To me, first they were more panicking, but now everyone is cool as far as I can see. And again, I happen to be a member of the disaster group here. And last Wednesday there was a meeting with the MP for North Leeward, along with the leader of the disaster group, Dora James. We had a meeting and we review our plans. If there's an evacuation, what should happen? We enter the whole plan.
Usually in the mountain, we smell the sulfur a lot, right? Because we usually go to the mountain. But this past time, you smell it home now and again.
Okay.
So that gets a lot of the people scared. But I don't scared. I have my grandchildren, my wife. If we have to evacuate, I will go with them. But probably I will not stay long wheresoever I go. I will be back home.
Though they anticipate some challenges, the Rosebank residents remain optimistic that all will go well should there be an evacuation order.
We plan to move by boat and by sea. And our meeting place, if it's possible, is at the community center. As a matter of fact, I have here with me a form, and this was sent by NEMO. So there's a SWOT group in the area. We went around and we talked with people, and we want to find the vulnerable persons and where they are. I think if it's not done early enough, that people will panic and start to do things on their own. That's my only problem. And there's some persons who will not move. I know that for sure. So I don't know how the government will deal with those people.
I was 12 years when Europe, I be kind of scared because I was small. But now I come a man and he act up. I have no fear because we have to live with it. If the volcano had to blow, you have to evacuate people. And a lot of people will move. Especially young people will never experience it. But the elderly people who experience it, they will not have a scare. Some will move and some will not. So the government will try best, and NEMO, we get the information from NEMO. So where they say, we have to go with it.
Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves said the international community must band together to get through these challenging times. PM Gonsalves was at the time making a virtual presentation to a UN Security Council high-level meeting discussing the challenges of COVID that should be of maintaining peace and security in fragile contexts.
The year 2020 has been an immensely challenging one, which offered many important lessons, not the least of which is the importance of multilateralism. Amidst the continuously expanding public health, socioeconomic, humanitarian, and security challenges experienced the world over, there is a clear and present need for practical and people-centered solutions that bolster national ownership in countries that require assistance.
He highlighted SVG's high-level meeting in November, where discussions were had on addressing the drivers of conflict and insecurity.
The Security Council must continue to play a leading role as it works more closely with the other main organs of the United Nations, namely the General Assembly and the Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, to foster developmental solutions to the challenges of peace and security. We must also leverage more often the strategic advisory capacity and convening platform of the Peace Building Commission to mobilize multilateral partners.
Dr. Gonzalez also made a call for the creation of a reparations committee for several historical crimes.
To echo the calls of Sir Hilary Beckles, our keynote speaker in November, for the Special Committee on Decolonization to finalize its important work, and for reparations to be provided for the historical crimes of native genocide, African slavery, and violent colonization, which have left severe legacies of underdevelopment in their wake. Reparatory justice must form part of any serious international development agenda.